here, and those sitting up front can see that there is a little yellow flame. Actually, it's a particle which is shooting up out from the sample, and the experimentalist could feel something hit his hand, but he could find the particle actually afterwards. But what we are doing is we are putting these chips in a device called differential scaling calorimeter, where you measure the heat coming out from the reaction. And this is the blue line here. You see at around 430 degrees, the temperature, the heat development shoots out through the roof literally, and then cools down again. So it takes off and ignites at a relatively low temperature. The red line here is the only published corresponding experiment with this material, which we call nanothermite. And it is called nanothermite because it is qualitatively different from the stuff we saw on the French car, from the good old invention by Hans Goldschmidt, where you finely divided aluminum and finely divided iron oxide, and you just mix the two powders. This, in science, we call the top-down approach to making this mixture. You have something bigger, and you make the particles smaller. In nanotechnology, you start from, we call it the bottom-up procedure. You are making the materials from the atomic scale and molecular scale and upwards. You're telling, or you're actually cheating, the atoms and the molecules to arrange in certain structures. It is not old wine and new bottles. It is a fundamental different approach to making materials. And when you're making a thermite by nanotechnology, there are two important features of the material and the procedure. One is that the particles, the aluminum particles and the iron oxide particles, are much smaller than in the old-fashioned thermite. So, and they're much more intimately mixed in the material, so the reaction is much faster. Also, the particles are embedded in a polymer matrix, which helps along in different ways which we do not quite understand in this particular case. But you have the option during production of nanothermite to mix in other chemicals in the material, which eventually can use the energy of the chemical reaction and convert it not from it being an incendiary, as the classical thermite is, to being an explosive. This is why you see this violent reaction. It is taking off at a lower temperature than conventional thermite, where you have to kick it at much higher temperatures to start with. This is what a chip could look like. An example of a chip which had been subjected to this experiment I just showed you in the calorimeter particular. And what you see here is this is iron being formed from the thermitic reaction. This is iron. This is an unambitious proof that we are dealing with a thermite process because iron, elemental iron, is formed in the process. This is a lucky find from the dust. And it is a lucky find because it's a chip which was only partly reacted. So you can see here the iron sphere is still sticking to the chip, which has been reacted here. There's still remaining, it is the red layer which is the reactive layer. It is still remaining active material, only for some reason, which we don't understand. Oh, it's not important. It was only partly reacted. And the resemblance between these two reacted chips is striking. And again, we can apply image dispersive spectroscopy. Whenever we are here, we can direct our electron beam, and we can use energy dispersive spectroscopy to certify the identity of the iron formed here and the iron formed here. And these are pictures from different chips being burned in the different this instrument I told you about before. So burned chips from the junction. These are examples from the laboratory of Henry Ryan, another chemist in Ohio, who actually made nanothermite himself in the laboratory, following a recipe which had been published by researchers from the what you call Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, a military laboratory. Because even though much of the information of this material is classified, this is military research which started about the early 90s. But even these colleagues within the military complex have to make presentations at conferences, and they had to apply for funding. So we can get information about these materials. They themselves call it the variety I told you, which is converted into explosives, is smaller, cheaper, and nastier than the old explosives used. But it must be stressed that we do not know exactly which role was played by the vector chips. And I'll show you some, how to say, conflicting or intriguing observations here before I close. Another very short little video by David Chandler. Yes, please?
Can you comment on the distribution? Like, is it easy to find these chips in the dust? Is there a lot of them, or are there a few of them?
Well, that, in our experience, this is an experience we got actually after the publication, because I have 2 dust samples where it was very hard to find any unreactive chips. And it turns out that the content of the red grade chips very much depends on the location of the finding, and I believe, most importantly, if it has been subjected to the fire, to the showers, to the rain in the days after. I think, and it must be stored in a dry, cool place in intermediate years. So, but luckily, the 5 samples which the article was based on, there were red grade chips omnipresent in all 5 of them. But then I also have received a sample from the vacuum cleaner, and it was there. In terms of red grade chips, I mean, there was a lot of remaining of this rock, but there were no red grade chips. So then yes, if you have the right, good, well collected sample close to the towers, the red grade chips are abundant. Yes, please.
Was the titanium in the energy dispersive spectra significant? There was a large amount of titanium shown by the peak relative to the iron, but it wasn't present in Stephen's sample.
There was a little titanium peak. Is that what you were
There were
referring
actually
to?
2 titanium peaks, and one was almost as large as the iron peak.
Yeah, the identity, no. There was a little titanium. But it's true that sometimes there are other elements coming up. Also, zinc and chromium, which we believe is contamination from the primer which contained zinc and chromium. It depends on, this must be a contamination. Where the titanium in this specific sample came from, I don't know. But it's a very common pigment in white paint. So it could be for that. I cannot answer this specific question. Yes?
Was there any consideration with regard to nanothermite to maybe more other rumored military uses like thermite?
Well, thermite is a different thing, which I don't have time to. But thermite is thermite when you add sulfur to it. And it has the advantage of cutting, when you add sulfur to thermite, it cuts through steel much faster. And there have been researchers from Rochester Technical University, called Jonathan Barnett, who found sulfidation of 2 steel beams, one from the towers and the other from the field 7. And this is a completely unambitious proof of the application of thermite, which is number 1 to use when cutting steel. The red grade sheets cannot account for this one. We do not find sulfur. which implies that there must be at least different kinds of thermite applied for the demolition of World Trade Center. I stress, so we do not know exactly which role was played by the red bridges. We know it shouldn't be there. It's high technology material. And it can, due to the nanothermite, is a very versatile material. It can be sprayed and painted on the structure. And many people have focused on this property of nanothermite. It's much safer to work with. You can use it as paint. I didn't believe this for a long time, that this feature was important for a long time. I couldn't see the point of painting the steel frame with nanothermite. But now I show you a video which has made me rethink the whole thing, or rather proves that maybe when we are making a distinction between incendiary and explosive and rocket fuel, we are operating with concepts which are obsolete. What we are seeing here is something which covers all three features, and what is going on in this video, which will be the last show, I do not quite understand. You'll see the South Tower exploding from a helicopter, and there are some very important features of this one. First one is you'll see explosions going on above the level of the impact of the airliner. And if any of you are familiar with what is called the pile driver theory, according to which the top part of the skyscraper should drive its way through the lower part, should crush its way through the lower part. This is a pile driver model for collapse of the towers. Now it is killed by what you're going to see here, because you'll see the explosions occurring above the impact point of it. You'll also see the top section of the South Tower starting tilting before it comes down. Now when something starts to turn here, it's supposed to continue to turn and go down. It doesn't. It disappears in the air. It just simply vanishes, explodes. But the point related to what we just said about the nanothermite is that you'll see fragments coming out, which is going towards the ground faster than free fall. How can anything fall faster than free fall? Well, it can if you fire a rocket from the top of the tower towards the ground, it will move faster than free fall. And you will see a trail, a white trail after them, which is compatible with the observation of aluminum oxide, which is the other product of the thermite reaction. Most astonishingly, you will see a fragment coming out of the South Tower and then change direction 90 degrees. It comes out like this and then it suddenly goes this way. What is happening? David Chen.
Question.
Yes, question.
Right here.
What ignites it?
Electrically.
What starts that ignition or that reaction?
It started electrically. The remote control. Wireless.
And would one do the whole building, or would they have to continuously do it?
Oh, continuous. What you see when the towers is coming down, you'll see continuous that the crush zone is moving actually at a constant acceleration, 2/3 of free fall. I should have rebooted the thing in the intermission.
Wow.
Sorry for that. We should see.
It's just a computer that controls it.
Like that.
No, you just push one and no, it's just a computer controls everything all the way down. So you just push one button and it does it.
Turn the mute on the down below.
This particular video clip is rich in details that call the official story into question. Notice it. This is the destruction of the South Tower of the World Trade Center, viewed from a helicopter to the south. This particular video clip is rich in details that call the official story into question. Notice the numerous explosions on the west side of the building above the impact point. top 30-floor section falls, it tips to the east. It starts off intact, but then it disintegrates in midair. Gravity alone could not cause the top section to disintegrate. When an object is in free fall, there are no internal stresses. It should have hit the ground in one piece, but it didn't. Some of the debris is clearly being accelerated by forces other than gravity. These effects can be caused by late firing explosives, which can produce a white smoke trail. White smoke, consisting of aluminum oxide, is a byproduct of the thermite reaction. While producing this video, I ran across one rocket projectile I had not seen commented on before. This one stopped midair and changed directions. Even taking perspective effects into account, this projectile lost one component of momentum and gained another. That requires an impulse. Note that the rocket trail does not point back to the building, but the point where the impulse occurred. Let's take it from the top. There's a lot going on. Watch for the smoking guns.
Yeah, before I close, let me tell you a little personal story about this. And this is, 4 years ago, I didn't know anything about this. But I saw Pivot 7 go down residentially, and it made my jaw drop. I had to push the button again. But once, nobody had, this was World Trade Center, and I hadn't seen it before. Why has nobody told me about this? Next, I couldn't understand what was going on. So from that moment on, there's been no way back for me, but there is a way ahead, and this road has led me to Victoria and to meet a lot of wonderful Canadians, and thank you for coming out today. Finally, safety was the